Okay, so in the world of airlines, things can change fast. But what Ryanair did in late 2024, that wasn't just a good quarter. It was a massive financial comeback. So let's break it down and figure out how Europe's biggest airline managed to turn a really tough spot into a huge win. So it all kicks off with this number right here. In the last 3 months of 2024, and remember, this is usually a slower time for airlines, Ryanair posted a profit of almost 150 million euros. Now that's a decent number by itself, right? But it's the story behind it that makes it so incredible. And this is where you see the full picture. Just look at that jump. They went from 15 million euros to 149 million in 1 year. That's a tenfold increase. So you got to ask, how in the world did they pull that off?
All right, to really get it, we need to dig into the key numbers from this amazing quarter. Because this wasn't just a fluke, you know? It came from solid performance right across the board.
Yeah, this breaks it down really well. You can see traffic, that's passenger numbers, was up a solid 9%. That brought in 10% more revenue overall, and that little 1% bump in average fares, that's actually huge. It shows things were stabilizing after a rough patch. So more people flying, more money coming in. It's a simple formula, but man, is it powerful.
But here's the thing, to really understand what's going on, we got to go back in time about a year. Because this massive jump in profit, it's all tied to solving a very, very modern problem. Something they call OTA pirates.
So, OTA pirate, what is that? Well, it's basically an online travel agent. You know, sites like Booking.com or Kiwi, that's selling an airline's tickets without any official deal. This can cause all sorts of chaos for both customers and the airline. And believe me, back in late 2023, this was a giant headache for Ryanair. This timeline lays out the whole drama. So, late 2023, these travel sites just drop Ryanair flights. Poof, they're gone. This meant Ryanair had to slash prices like crazy just to fill seats, and it absolutely hammered their profits. Okay, now jump forward a year to the quarter we're talking about, and the problem's gone. Taking away that pressure to cut fares, that is the #1 reason for this incredible bounce back. But okay, it wasn't just about that one problem disappearing. This whole comeback is built on something much deeper, a brutally efficient business model that's just really, really hard to compete against. So let's take a look under the hood of their money machine. And this right here is a huge piece of the puzzle, a full 35% of their money. We're talking over €1 billion in just 3 months. Doesn't even come from the ticket. It's all the extras. Priority boarding, picking your seat, checking a bag. That's a massive financial cushion. Other airlines, they'd kill for that. All right, let's talk about the biggest, scariest cost for any airline, fuel. The price goes all over the place. So how does Ryanair stop itself from getting crushed by sudden price spikes that can basically bankrupt other airlines?
They do something really smart called hedging. To put it simply, they basically agree to buy most of the fuel they'll need in the future at a price they lock in today. For the next year, they had over 75% of their fuel locked in at a great price. It's kind of like fixing your mortgage rate. It just gives you certainty and protects you from nasty surprises.
And their CEO, Michael O'Leary, pretty much said it all. The gap between what it costs them to fly someone versus what it costs their competitors, well, that gap isn't just big, it's actually getting wider. And that, right there, is their secret weapon.
But here's the catch. Even for a company that is obsessed with controlling every single cost, there are some things you just can't control. And for Ryanair, that one big problem has a name: Boeing.
Yep. For all their success, the airline's grand plans for growth are running smack into a wall. A very real, very physical one.
And this is a problem you can't solve with clever accounting or low fares. Here's the deal. The plan was simple. Get a whole bunch of new, super efficient Boeing jets, they call them game changers, to drive costs down even more. But the reality? Boeing just can't deliver them fast enough. These constant delays are slowing everything down, and it's even forced Ryanair to cut back on their growth plans.
Okay, so let's pull back for a second. Why are we so focused on just this one quarter? Well, because when you look back from later in 2025, it's so clear that this wasn't just a good 3 months. It was the turning point. It was the moment that set them up for a truly record-breaking year. And this timeline just shows you the insane momentum. That strong Q3 profit we saw in January, that was the launch pad. By May, they'd finished their year with a huge €1.6 billion profit. But wait, it gets better. By November, the profits for just the first half of the next year had exploded to a record $2.5 billion, and it all kicked off right here in this one comeback quarter.
So what are the big takeaways here?
Well, first, being obsessed with costs is king. You have to be. Second, that money from extras, the ancillary revenue, it's a massive safety net. Third, being proactive with stuff like fuel hedging is absolutely critical to avoid getting sideswiped by the market. And finally, a big one. Even the biggest players can get tripped up by things they can't control, like their suppliers.
And that leaves us with one final massive question. Ryanair came out of this tough spot stronger than ever. Their cost advantage over everyone else is wider than it has ever been. The only thing really slowing them down is how many planes they can get their hands on. So you have to wonder, is there anyone in Europe who can actually stop them?